I'm going to talk about the use of micropayments in journalism. Micropayments are a payment by article approach for the news industry that's presenting an alternative to the subscription only paywall that you'd see, for instance, on the Wall Street Journal, where they charge you X amount of dollars for full service, full access to not only their print content but to their digital content. If we're going to look at micropayments in the grand scheme of journalism, as we know, news consumption is at an all-time high, with digital content really driving the market now. According to the Pew Research Center, 39 out of 50 news websites have had more traffic on mobile devices than their desktop computers, which is only going to show that news is pretty much becoming more mobile. Lower print sales, ad revenue has dropped 4% as of 2015. For print stands, the internet actually has seen an increase in digital ad revenue, only furthering the point that people are accessing news more on online devices than through newspapers, as we could see. But in general, there's a lower subscription rate, subscription rate for print, as well as a low subscription rate for online sites. With the amount of information available, you don't always have to pay the New York Times or pay Wall Street Journal. You can find the article or news information somewhere else for free, which is contributing to this low subscription rate. Subscription problems, like I've been talking about, while 56% of those who do read newspapers do so exclusively in print, the availability of information, through social media, Facebook now has news, Apple is creating a news software to add to their operating system for people to see. The overwhelming mass amount of information that people can access for free is out there, which is contributing to this whole subscription problem. So micropayments are really something that has come in as a way to kind of offset that. As you can see, this is a photo from the Pew Research Center about who is visiting some of the top online sites for journalism. USA Today and New York Times ranked number 2, just to give you some more background information on that. In practice, for micropayments, while most news websites are running the paywall method for subscription, not many are subscribing because, like I said, the availability of information outside that one source. But in order to, really accommodate the loss of money and loss of subscriptions, micropayments ask readers to pay by the article, which thus decreases someone's commitment to subscriptions. One of the things that we're starting to find out is that people don't want to really be tied down to one news source. If you want to subscribe to New York Times, you want to subscribe to the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, or other news sites, the money can really rack up, and this pay-by-article approach wants to sort of accommodate that by allowing people the freedom to view any article they want from any sort of site and still pay for it. One of these examples is Blendle. Blendle is an application that came out in the Netherlands that aggregated news websites throughout the country on this one platform. It charged 27 cents per article that was read. It also had a policy in which it refunded the money to the users if they did not like the article, or if they proved that it was just clickbait of cats doing something funny. It measured that they had over 250,000 users, with the vast majority of them under 35 years old. They will be adding the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post in the coming years. And what it did was they did a 365-day experiment, and it proved that people actually do want to pay for journalism. But one of the things that they found out was that they don't really pay that much money for news. One of the problems that the site found was that, first of all, there is the refund policy, which, if you offer somebody a refund for every article they read, what's the point in actually charging them in the first place? What it did was it did a lot of aggregation more than it contributed to kind of brand loyalty, in which the app, let's say if once, American news sites get through on there, it basically doesn't create loyalty. People are reading articles from everywhere, written by anyone, which, kind of decreases the quality. But what happens is that they also notice that it doesn't work for hyperlocal news organizations. For a company as big as the New York Times, it really can afford to do the pay-by-article because of the amount of readership that it has. However, for a small town that's just covering the town's efforts, where it really relies on subscription rates. What they also noticed was that people are less inclined to pay for hard news because of its availability elsewhere, but are more inclined to pay for more long-form feature stories for that 27-cent rate. The positives that it found was that it's easily trackable, the metrics. They can actually see what articles people read the most. They can see who read them. They can also see what people like. They can see that that's how they tested that feature stories wound up making more money than non-feature stories. The money paid is also in addition to advertising, because Blendle was an app that aggregated a bunch of sites. There were still ad revenues from those original sites, those original digital news sites. So the practice of, if micropayments have any sort of future, if it can really affect the market, it is a modified subscription service. There are subscription services, for instance, like Netflix or Apple Music or Spotify, allows people to listen to music without having the hassle of buying it. It really kind of frees up the market. So what it does is that it modifies that subscription service. Apps like Blendle, and maybe there could be an American version that sort of supplements the paywalls, but still generating money by an article basis. Like we said earlier, it doesn't work for local papers because they really do rely on that subscription fee to stay afloat. People can still find news elsewhere on social media. There's a plethora of information that can be found for free that isn't really trackable, and the aggregation sites have a higher user rate. So, for instance, people would be more inclined to probably use Blendle because they can get all the information on one spot rather than just going straight to Washington Post and picking X amount of articles. In my opinion, I think it can work. It needs to be a little modified. I think that there needs to be a quota that websites offer. For instance, if somebody pays the New York Times $4 a month, they have access to maybe 10 articles. And what that does, it kind of creates kind of a PayPal system where there's an online account for people that can just put money in there and freely read any article they want from any website, so they can kind of distribute their money and take in content elsewhere. I do believe the refund feature is not a good feature to have. However, I guess in the launching phase, it kind of is going to, that refund factor would set the pace, at what people want to read and what people are willing to pay for. There's also the notion of how much is an article worth. Are long-form stories worth more, or are they worth less? Are hard news stories worth more or less? Investigative reporting. A lot of effort goes into these stories, and to charge 27 cents per article really doesn't seem something that's feasible and sustainable for this to actually continue and really take on the market. But I believe we're onto something. We're onto something in paying by the article, which really allows people kind of the freedom to take in any information they want.